It's time for Uncle Bob's Cigar Corner, the January 2020 edition. And for a huge big change, we're going to do a pipe session. I'm calling it Pipes with Cousin Brice. Brice will be right at my elbow because I know very little about pipes. I was told a long time ago that if you want to learn about something, try teaching it. So here we are. And I've gone through quite a bit of the basics and quite a bit of the bullet points to know what to direct Brice into, but we're going to start out with how old pipes have been and when they started. And before I started, I wanted to thank Brice Sandifer, our manager here at Thunderbird, whose depth of pipe knowledge is infinite, it seems, and we're going to test that tonight. I also want to thank Jason for putting together all this fantastic equipment that works so well and makes this run so smooth, and Scott for putting together the slide deck and supplying us some mics and a lot of enthusiasm and encouragement. So without further ado, I'll get into the first slide, which there, you got that up on the screen. So we're looking at a pipe hobby that goes back further than cigars do. 100 AD, pipes were used in the Mayan civilization in Mexico, as you can see, and then they were introduced by Sir Walter Raleigh in the 1500s. Meerschaum pipes, which actually come from Turkey, and what a Meerschaum pipe is it's a mineral that's almost putty-like, and it's refined and processed into ornately carved pipes which come out of Turkey. Briar pipes, which are the pipes that everybody's familiar with. For instance, this is a briar pipe. Pat, by the way, is here tonight. She brought in tons and tons of her pipes, just an amazing collection. But a briar is the definition of the wood bowled pipe that is used from a particular briar that we'll talk about a little bit later on. And then in the 1850s, also the French began producing wooden pipes. And in 1868, the famous corncob pipe, also known as the Missouri Meerschaum, came into popularity, and they're still popular today. So we got tons of people smoking those types of pipes. Additionally, we've got in the 1920s, regardless of the type of pipe, the smoking of pipes began catching on in America as a sophisticated pastime. Until now, pipe shops were virtually non-existent, and the focus was on cigars. But in the 1920s, people started evolving their taste of pipes. And I don't know about you, but I know automatically my IQ goes up 10 points when I put a pipe on my hand instead of a cigar. So I think that might have had something to do with it. In the 1950s, pipe smoking became a symbol of sophistication and really gained its popularity through high-end people, movie stars. I don't know if you remember good old My Three Sons or The Dad in Leave It to Beaver, but whenever we watched a TV show back in the sitcoms of the 50s, I can remember seeing the dad always had a pipe in his little pipe office or some mystery room in this place where all the problems were solved. So pipes became quite popular in America. But what the heck is a pipe? And this is where I'm really going to count on Brice, because a pipe is a very high art craft tool that has a lot of intricate parts to it that I thought it was just basically a bowl of wood with a hole in it. But they have names for all these things. The rim, the chamber, and the shank, and the length of the shank, it is actually sometimes makes a difference in how the briar was able to be carved into a pipe. The tenon, which is the part in here, is the part that It always breaks, am I right, Brice?
That's right.
That's the part that's the...
You ever drop your pipe, that's where it'll pop off right there.
That's the most exposed part of the pipe where it's going to break. And it's good that it breaks at the tenon because these stems can be replaced, whereas the briar,
Yep.
if it's a collectible pipe, you're done.
Yep.
And there's also the bits. I've already got a habit of getting these little rubber tip. I call them pipe condoms. I'm sure there's a more sophisticated term than that, but they're a soft tip that saves the stem of the pipe, and it also saves your lips and teeth a little bit. So those are the various components of a pipe and what goes into it as we know it today. We talked a little bit about the types of pipes earlier, but I wanted to just give you the basics here because there are so many options. The briar pipe, which we're all familiar with. The calumet is a different word for a peace pipe, and calumet goes worldwide. Peace pipe seems to be associated with North America, but it's the pipe that the Native Americans used for ceremonies and peace and war, which I think I got a good story for Brice about that. But they also are ornate ceremonial pipes that are used to smoke many things besides tobacco to signify ceremonial significance. So that's the calumet. By the way, the last slide on our slide deck is Mark Hansen with a glorious, glorious peace pipe. And I can't remember where he got it. It seems like it was Arizona or maybe New Mexico, but it's a good example of a calumet pipe. Now, clay pipes are kind of the working man's pipe. They're inexpensive and easy to make, but they're an all-around pipe that gained a lot of popularity in the 1500s because basically you could make it out of clay. And this is my clay pipe that I got sometime around when I was watching The Hobbit a whole bunch. It works really well, but I got to tell you, this clay bowl gets so hot you can't hold it. So you traditionally kind of hold it like this so you don't burn your hands. We also, and you may be familiar with corncob pipes. I don't think I've got one with me, but they're just about everywhere. They literally are a corncob, and that's what they look like. And they're not meant to be long-term collectibles, and they could burn out after a few years of use, but they're totally, completely serviceable. They burn well, they taste good. When I want to try a new tobacco and I'm not sure of it, I'll grab my corncob pipes, throw it in, and throw a bowl of it in there, and no harm, no foul. You probably, in this day and age, have all heard of hookahs, and hookahs have been used for, well, actually since the 1600s. It's a water pipe, and I think everyone understands that as you draw in the smoke goes down under and is kind of naturally filtered by a water reservoir, and then it comes out to the stem, and there can be various, I think they call them nipples or draws, where you can, 6 or 8 people can smoke on a common hookah. The odd thing about hookahs that I didn't know is when you put the tobacco in, or whatever substance you put in the hookah, you put the tobacco in the bowl straight up. Put the fire, which is an ember, a coal, on top of the tobacco. So in cigars, the ember is really at the base of what you're enjoying. In pipes, you light the pipe and you burn it down through. But in a hookah, you actually put the source of the fire on top of the tobacco or whatever, and you draw that heat down instead of up in such a manner as to burn the tobacco from the top. Thought that was interesting, really unique and different, and that's unique to the hookahs. Also, meerschaum, and I always thought meerschaum was a really, really hard kind of a rock that they spent thousands of hours carving things out. It's really a mineral. It's almost clay-like, so it's almost putty-like, and they have to process it and dry it out and fire it, I believe, to get it to be really hard and carvable. And then when they do that, they make Pat's got a Meerschaum pipe here that I just love. Is this it? Just to give you an example, and I'm sure everybody is a little bit familiar with Meerschaum pipes, but this this is how fantastic a Meerschaum pipe can be. It's just a work of art, and they get this patina on them as they discolor. They absorb the oils and moistures and tobacco around them, and they age so beautifully. And she's got a couple of examples of just magnificent Meerschaums. And those are highly collectible and fun to find. They're surprisingly, I was amazed at how much you could get them for, you know, like $100, $200, but then they could go up to thousands because they're works of art, I think. Now, here's the part where I'm going to nudge Brice a whole bunch because I'm going to try and trip my way through this, but boy, it confuses the heck out of me at this point. My understanding of pipe tobaccos is that there's only 3 basic varietals, or it's like all the cigars that we smoke nowadays come basically from a Cuban seed. And it's a very limited varietal. And then we'll grow it in different soil, and we'll hybridize it, and we'll try and evolve the seed to be something that it never was in the first place. Well, it's kind of similar with pipes. With pipes, there's only 3 basic kinds of seeds, which are Burley, Oriental, and Virginia. And that is, I would call it the family of the tobacco plant. That was the genesis of all the different types of tobacco. And from that, we get hybrids of Latakia, which you may be familiar with, Perique, and Cavendish. And they also produce blends, and this is at the plant level, for English, Balkan, and aromatic. And aromatic, I do know this, the easy definition, if you're familiar with the cigar world, an aromatic pipe tobacco is like an infused cigar. Only we look down our noses at acids or Havana honeys, and we think they're just, it's because they didn't have good enough tobacco. In the pipe world, they have a more elegant term for it. They call it casing. And if you have a British casing, it's just right. It's like an old dusty library. And there's all kinds of casings that they can add in varying amounts to enhance a very, very good blend in the first place. And that whole category is called aromatics. And it gets a lot of respect and a lot of following people that really love that type of tobacco. So there's no downplaying the significance of those type of tobaccos. Now, having said all that, I'm gonna ask Brice, is there any 2 cents worth you feel that you could put in on where all this stuff comes from in terms of flavorings? Maybe tell us how they taste.
Yeah, so the first things you're going to dabble in when you first get into pipe tobacco, normally, it's not always the case, but normally, most people jump into aromatics because they get into flavors that they know. Usually that's sweet things. Just like with cigars. The average cigar smoker, what do they start with? Infused cigars, right? Because they start with things they know. They want to try a cigar. They don't want to quite jump into the stoutness of some of the things we dabble in as experienced smokers. They get into things like vanillas and cherries. Same things with pipe tobacco, aromatics. The biggest thing that they're going to start getting familiarized with are things like Cavendish. Cavendish is a very welcoming tobacco. They're sweetened and unsweetened that are good for the beginner palate to start learning how to smoke different blends. The things that they might end up jumping into later, the way I look at it is when you first get into pipe smoking, it's as a child, right? When you're a child, what are the things you like? You like candy, you like those sweet things, those things that you know, overall sweetness, right? Then you kind of jump into the other part. When you're in your teenage years, what do you like? You like pizza, you like chips, you like those big salty beefy snacks, right? That's when you start getting into your Englishes. Very common. That's the most common transition is from aromatics to Englishes, and it's one extreme to the other. Then you start getting into the subtle nuances. You've been smoking for a while, and you're like, you know what? It's kind of like us. We, as cigar smokers, we want maybe a sun-grown or a Connecticut, something just with subtle nuances where we pick up some nuttiness and things like that. Well, same thing with that. You're going to start getting into your Burleys and your Virginias, and then you're going to start really kind of dabbling in more of your aging processes of different tobaccos and how to figure out what you like and how to smoke each blend. So that's really where you're going to get the most bang for your buck on each leaf is figuring out how to smoke each one. Biggest mistake for aromatic smokers when they start off is they puff, 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 puff. When they get that pipe really hot, they burn their tongue. So one of the things when you first start off is learning your cadences. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. But starting off, when you first start off, the first thing you're really going to learned, you're going to really want to wrap your head around is just the aromatic leaf, because that's what you're into in the first place. So learning about the different blending components is how they use Virginia, Burley, and Cavendish for a lot of the aromatics. But overall, it's a very simplistic process if you take it blend by blend.
Are the aromatics generally lighter in strength or nicotine content,
yes,
so they don't bowl you over?
Generally speaking, there's only a few aromatics out there that have a real punch to them, but they are not meant to be heavy smokes. They're not meant to be overwhelming. They're supposed to be very relaxing, not overpowering, flavorful smokes. It's just like it's like an infused cigar. There are not a ton of infused cigars out there that are powerful punches, and they do that for a reason. It's the people that are dabbling in stronger blends usually have more developed palates by then.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I notice also when I'm just exactly what he said. First thing I grabbed was Nutty Irishman. And then I had to have that rum and maple, and my house smelled like an IHOP for a week. But the funny thing that I noticed is I didn't get much taste through the mouth, through the smoking process. It was all room aroma. And that kind of surprised me, because once in a while I have a cigar smoker that'll come in, and he's going to a party, and he wants a cigar that smells good in a room. That's a hard pick. On a pipe, I can tell him what the pipe's going to smell like. You know, the cherries and the Englishes and all these different aromatics. They're very clearly kind of nice. You know, it's kind of funny. I used to travel a lot in my business, and I worked with a salesman, and the both of us were in our cars constantly. Neither one of us smoked at the time, but the pipe tobacco has such an essence to it that once a week we would stop at a pipe shop, and he would get some aromatic pipe tobacco, open his ashtray, shows you how old I am, open his ashtray, and he put like a bowl or two of the pipe tobacco in his ashtray and close it. And when he's in the car, all week long, his car smells like a nice pipe aroma of his choosing for that week. And then he dumped the ashtray, put a fresh bowl in. So he didn't smoke pipes, I didn't smoke pipes, but his Chevy smoked pipes every day. So that's kind of the difference of how these pipe blends can have an effect. The other thing I thought was amazing is we're selling the loose stuff by the ounce.
I know.
And it's $5 to $6 an ounce. And I look at an ounce and I think, yeah, that'd make a cigar, so what the heck, $5, it's like a $5 cigar. I took that home. I got 10 bowls out of it. I must have been smoking more than a week's worth of cigars for $5. Now, buying a pipe, whole different story. You can spend some serious bucks buying the pipe. But pipe tobacco, you can try all the different pipe tobacco you want. You can buy an ounce here, an ounce there. You can blend them yourself. Can't blend a cigar yourself. But I've got a little bowl, a little mason jar of different leftover blends that I had out laying around, that I just mixed them all up, and I go in there and I smoke that, and I never know what I'm going to get, but it's always a pleasant surprise. So the whole idea that the cost of a pipe and the cost of enjoying pipe tobacco and experimenting with it and moving on to maybe stronger stuff. Everybody that comes in asks Brice, if he's in the room, what's this and what's that? And it's an open-ended question. There's so many different blends out there. Seattle Pipe Club has a blend called Plum Pudding that's world famous.
Oh yeah, it's very good.
And it intrigues me. And you can buy it and try it out and stuff. But the world of blending pipe tobacco is where the real essence of the hobby is. Unless you become a collector like Pat and Brice, which I ain't going there yet. It's amazing. I don't know. I got 5 pipes. I'm good.
Yeah.
So those are the different types of pipe tobacco. Now, here's another thing. I look at some of these cuts and I think, well, they didn't finish at the factory. It's just a big lump of rock. And I've got a lot of learning to do on that. But there's basically, you've got cube, flake, plug, ribbon, shag, and rope. So the stuff that I'm used to seeing is what, shag? It's in the little flakes?
Ribbon. You're used to seeing it in ribbon. Most aromatics are in a ribbon form. One that's not on here is cake. In fact, I'm smoking on some now. These are all just different processing techniques that they use. A lot of them, the way they go about processing these, they pack a lot of natural flavor to them. Not casing, not anything like that. I mean, there are a little bit of casing in almost every single blend.
Because of how they compress it?
The way they compress it, the heat press, all different forms of different processing. And this goes into the way they formulate it. It's all calculated. They've tried it, and a lot of times you'll see blends that are made in flake, cake, and ribbon, and they're the same exact one every single time, but they're totally different in flavor, and the way they procure each one. We have rope upstairs. We have flake. We have everything. I encourage you, try a bowl of each. See if you don't see it.
Well, okay. I understand it comes in different ways, and it's a reason for it. Mm-hmm. How the heck do I get that in my pipe?
So there are actual packing procedures for different. I mean, there are actual ways you can do a fold for a flake, things like that. What I encourage people when they're starting off, and it's called rubbing it out. All right, it's going to go straight there. You rub the tobacco out, and it basically breaks it down to a ribbon form that you're more comfortable with.
It's that simple.
It's that simple. Just break it down to where it packs evenly in your pipe, and you're good to go. But when you do get down the road and you do want to dabble in different packing procedures, there are ways to pack ribbon. There are ways to pack flake, cake, and coin without breaking them apart. But it takes a real steady hand, and you got to really figure it out. Otherwise, you can butcher your hour. And it'll smoke, yeah. In fact, if you take a flake and you fold it in half and put it in a circular, you can put it right in your pipe. But it takes some skill to get down to it, because you can leave a lot of air passages that you don't want to really get into. But yeah.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up, because the hard part about smoking a pipe is smoking a pipe. And if you're lazy and you're going to sit there and you're looking at your cigar and you say, yep, that thing's going to be done in 45 minutes, and I'm going to sit here until it goes out, and I'm going to have a good time, and I'm not going to move a muscle. Mm-hmm. Not so in the world of pipes.
Nope.
There's a lot of hobby-like, intricate activities that people who are kind of like to do things with their hands or like to tinker with stuff are going to love pipes. And I'm not saying you have to, but the people I see smoking pipes, they tend to seem to want to fiddle with their pipe. So I kind of know how this goes, but I'm going to let Brice tell us, how do we get, first of all, we just got a loose bowl of tobacco. And before you even start, one trick I learned is, in storing it, you don't put it in your humidor. You just keep it sealed up. and it'll stay that way. I know Scott and I were talking the other day. Scott said, "Well, I've got this little bag of pipe tobacco. It's 5 years old and it's all dried out, and he didn't think it'd smoke. Will it be okay?"
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, you lose a little bit over time. Some of the things that they use for each component will vaporize off that blend a little bit. You can never really get it back. There are ways to restore tobacco back to a moisture where you can carry it around and not worry about being so dried out. Overall, if it's something you're carrying with you, just put enough in that Ziploc bag that you're going to carry with you that you're going to use. Don't put the whole 2 ounces in a bag. And if you're switching blends and things like that, when you start getting into collecting pipe tobacco, it's a really good idea to start getting into mason jars. Put it in there, and it's also good for the aging process. Pipe tobaccos change dramatically with aging. There are blends like the one I'm smoking right here that we sell in the shop, but this one I bought 5 years ago, and it's 5 years old now, and it has turned into a gem. It's beautiful. So storing your tobacco, don't carry so much around that you're going to dry it out to the point where it's because there's a point of where it can become so dry that the bowl's done so long and it burns hot. You want a little bit of moisture in that bowl to help the slow down the burn on it, and it retains a lot of the moisture that is naturally in the leaf that has a lot of the flavor.
For instance, when I sell an ounce up there, if I grab it, it's so moist it sticks to my fingers. And one thing I noticed you doing a lot, you taught me on this, is when you take a bowl that you want to pack, and it's that moist because you've just bought it and it's in a Ziploc bag or in a mason jar. Brice actually puts that bowl out on like a paper towel or something and lets it aerate a little bit and lets it dry out for maybe 15-20 minutes.
Yeah, you just want the tobacco to be lightly spongy. You don't want it to, if you clamp onto some tobacco and you pinch it and it stays in that mold, it's too wet. But if you clench that tobacco and you squeeze it and it kind of sponges back out, it's ready to go. If it goes a little bit over the drying process, no harm, no foul. You're not going to completely dry out a tobacco in 20 minutes. So I let mine every single time, no matter where it's at, sit for about 20 minutes, and then I throw it in the bowl. And that usually gives me time to kind of pull my pipe out, get all my little tools out, and kind of have a little conversation, then I pack my bowl.
Packing the bowl. My tendency was to just keep on shoving tobacco down in there, so it's... And you showed me that basically you just kind of drop it in there and tamp it a little.
Well, there's several packing techniques. The biggest one involves basically the old saying is it's shaking the hand of 3 people. The first time you put it in there, it's like shaking the hand of a child. You just dab it in there. Second pinch you put in there, it's like shaking a woman's hand, just slightly more firm. Third one, pinch you put in there, it's like shaking a man's hand. You kind of put it in there, and then you pack it in there. That is the most common way of packing a pipe. The way I like to do it, and I heavily suggest researching it on YouTube. There's some great videos on it, on the Frank method. I started using it about 10 years ago, and it's effortless. And I'll tell you this, taking the time to pack your pipe right sets your hour. If you don't pack your pipe right, that hour is not going to be enjoyable, and it's a waste. There are many times, and I've smoked a pipe for a very long time, where I will pack my pipe, I'll take a draw, I'll think about it, and if it doesn't meet the criteria, in which I think that's going to be a good hour, I clear it out and redo it. Why not? It takes you, maybe a minute to repack it, but like I said, it sets the tone for the hour.
So I bought a new pipe because Brice got me all excited about all this stuff. And I got me a nice Savinelli. It's a beauty. I love this pipe. It's a apple.
That's a tomato.
That's a tomato.
Yeah.
Don't wander far off. Right?
It's a 320. 320 is the most popular size that Savinelli makes, and it's become really popular the last 10 years.
What he said.
Yeah.
So I got this, for maybe 70, 80 bucks. To me, I thought, wow, this is like buying a box of cigars, and it's so beautiful. And I put a pipe condom on it, which is what we call the little rubber.
Yeah.
I really like that, by the way. I highly recommend it. 50 cents. So
Yeah.
I have them on all the pipes that it'll fit on. And so I packed the bowl with Nutty Irishman. Why not? And I stood there in front of Brice, and I lit my jet lighter. And I put my jet lighter right down here, and I started puffing away like a pro, and I thought, hey, I'm cool. I know what I'm doing. I'm smart. So if you look closely, you'll see that the edge of this fantastic, magnificent 7LE pipe is all tarnished and not shiny. I did put olive oil on it, and it's still, you can still tell a little bit. But I'm calling that patina. I'm gonna, 20 years from now, I can talk about this experience knowledgeably, and that little mark will still be there telling me what an idiot I am. So, and the lesson I learned is when you go to light a pipe, get a pipe lighter.
Get a pipe lighter, and same thing with packing a pipe. Lighting the pipe is very similar. Take your time doing it. You want to make sure that it's a good, even burn around the bowl without singeing the rim of the bowl. Because if you do that, you're affecting the investment you just made in this beautiful pipe. So I always suggest with beginners, right on, is learn some matches. Learn how to do it. It takes a little bit of time because you're sitting there and you're brand new. You're fumbling with this pipe and you've just packed it, but you'll get the hang of it. And before long, you're sitting there and you'll light it. And I always keep a pipe lighter with me just for touch-ups, because when it gets lower, and especially for larger bowl pipes, you'll have more difficulty getting that match down into that bowl. So those pipe lighters really come in handy. The 90-degree ones, especially, but you can do just as good with a regular old big. But those 90-degree lighters go a long way. Never ever use a torch lighter on a pipe, though.
Torch lighter, bottom line, has probably 500 degrees too much heat, flame, energy than what any pipe can handle.
Yeah.
They just can't handle all of that heat that will hurt and damage the pipe, and I learned that real quickly. On another note on caring for the pipe is I noticed that Brice never gets very far, and he also leaves a trail of pipe cleaners. So he's sitting there smoking a bowl, and all of a sudden I hear him gurgle, and he doesn't say excuse me. And I look, and he grabs a pipe cleaner, and he's running it out like a rotor-rooter guy, and he's still smoking the pipe. And then the gurgle goes away.
Yep.
And then after he smokes the pipe, he de-gurgles it again, and he gets some of the stuff out, and then he takes, this is really weird. I don't know if we have any pipe cleaners, but I've never seen anybody do this. But this guy, to me, is the, pipe god. So he takes his pipe cleaner, and he runs it through, and he diddly-diddlies it and makes it all dried out. And then he empties whatever it might be in the bowl, which is just ashes, because somehow, I don't know how, I'm telling you, I got to work at this. Somehow, Brice knows when every single little bit of tobacco has burned in his pipe. I have no clue. I might have a half an inch down there or an inch down there. No way of knowing.
You don't leave a dottle.
Brice knows.
You don't leave a dottle.
No, well, it depends. I mean, if it's a brand new pipe, sometimes dottle, it's going to happen regardless. But when you start breaking in a pipe and that carbon hits the foot of the bowl, you're not going to have as much dottle. You're actually going to be able to smoke it all the way down, because that carbon that you've built on the chamber will actually absorb that moisture. So the more you smoke a pipe, the less dottle you're going to have down the road. So you're probably not going to run into that.
I got a lot of dottle. Bottom line is, after he cleans it out, he takes this pipe cleaner and he bends it like this, and somehow he makes the bend part be the same size as the pipe bowl, and he kind of twirls it around on the pipe bowl, and he takes a very, very light ash dust off the carbon cake. It's called cake.
Yes.
Because you don't want your cake to be built up. I think the term I heard was no thicker than the thickness of a dime.
Yeah.
If you overcake a cigar, it'll actually destroy the briar
Yeah,
and
it'll,
crack it and
yeah.
stuff. So he takes his pipe cleaner and cleans it out and stuff. And then, I don't know how he knows this, because I can never remember, but 30 minutes later, after the pipe's cooled off, then he pulls the stem off and cleans the stem and cleans the inside, and then he puts it all together. Ladies and gentlemen, this sounds like a lot of work to me. But I don't have the habit yet.
Well,
And pipe smokers do this subconsciously.
yeah, and it does. It becomes very. A lot of people say that. Pat had a great term for it. That smoking a pipe is a full-time job. It is at first. When you're learning it, it is a little bit of a process, but you do it after a while, and before long, you're done with your bowl. You don't remember ever running a pipe cleaner through there. You don't remember ever tamping. You don't remember. You just remember the bowl's done. You had a great time, and it's over. It's all muscle memory after a while, and before long, you don't even realize you're doing it. The only times you may realize it again is when you're breaking in a new pipe. It's like you just want to treat that pipe right the first 10 times you smoke it. You really want to treat it, especially the walls. The walls are really susceptible to heat for that carbon caking.
I heard you say once, I think it was last week, that it took you about a year to get in sync with your pipes and
did.
to know how to smoke them right.
It did. Well, it wasn't just learning how to smoke the pipe. It was learning how to smoke each blend. Each blend requires different cadences, different packing. I mean, the sky's the limit on what you have to learn as far as keeping the moisture down in your pipe, not burning your tongue. That's the biggest one when you're starting off. Is you'll get tongue bite on your tongue, and that happens for a slew of reasons. Either you're smoking too fast, or sometimes just the pH balance in the tobacco itself doesn't match the pH balance of your mouth, and it can greatly affect your whole mouth can get kind of sore. Be cognizant of those things. If certain blends don't work out, move on. There's plenty of blends out there.
Or if you're like me, you might have bit your tongue. There's that possibility.
Yeah.
So, look at that pipe.
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
Where did you get that?
Off of Etsy. Bought it from the Ukraine.
It's a Ukrainian pipe?
Yeah. Those are.
Look at this.
Is it hot?
Glass?
It's not hot. It doesn't ever get hot.
Is
And
that
it
a
says
good
princess
shot?
on it.
Closer.
Just noticed that.
What? This is from the Ukraine. It says princess on. Oh, it says princess on it,
Is it made out of glass?
and it smells like marijuana.
Yes.
Hey, Patrick got you one too, so yours says princess too.
Oh, really? Thanks, Patrick.
It says
And-
bur-
and
it
this
says
is-
brownie on it.
This is from Patrick. Even across the room, you see that pipe, and it's just a magnificent.
Yeah.
Fine. Have you? This is cool, and thank you. I just had to get that out to everybody because
But going
That's
into
awesome.
when you guys are done finishing your pipe, never disassemble it while it's hot.
while it's hot, right?
Never do that because a lot of times, if you ever buy an estate pipe, sometimes you'll get a pipe that has a really loose. You've got a few right there that has a loose bit that goes on, and you're like, how does that happen? Well, it happened because the person before you or yourself took that pipe apart while it was hot. And what that does is that wood is in a stage of expansion. So if you take that off right there, it's basically like stretching your underwear out. It's hard for it to go back, So not that I run into that often, but
Are you going to talk about lighting? Like how to light a pipe?
yeah, we can definitely go into that. So do you want to learn the match method, or would you like to learn the lighter? Okay,
Well,
cool.
I want you to finish the topic
Oh.
on what you do
Mhm.
when you're finished with the pipe and how long you wait before you take it apart.
Well-
So you don't damage it.
Okay. I'll start on his first real quick here. When you smoke a pipe, it depends. It really does. Some briar cools very fast. Really, really good briar. That pipe should stay cool the whole time. There are lower end briars that will I mean, you're going to run into some as you're buying. You're going to have a pipe that the whole time you're smoking it feels like you're smoking a piece of coal in your hand. Those happen every once in a while. It doesn't necessarily make it a bad pipe. It can be a bad pipe, but it doesn't make it a bad pipe. But it all depends. When you go back to fill that pipe, it should be room temperature, really, before you start doing anything. Doesn't have to be cold or anything, but you don't want it to be warm. You definitely don't want it to be hot. And then when you take it apart, you don't want to just, you want to make sure to grab it with a firm grip on both sides, like this. Not at the bit, because then you're putting pressure on the tenon right there. So what you want to do is you want to grab the pipe on this end and the pipe on that end, and you just want to honestly, they say counterclockwise, they say clockwise, there's no difference, but just keep the same motion going in the same way. You go like this, like that, it grinds it, and it can actually do some damage to briar itself. So make sure you grab it with both hands and do it in a very consistent, kind of even portion right there. And then you won't do any damage to your pipe.
And you were asking about lighting?
Yeah.
Okay, so lighting a pipe, let me see your pipe real quick here. Okay, let me see your lighter. All right, so when you're lighting your pipe, one thing you're gonna wanna make sure is that your tobacco is completely even around the bowl.
Okay.
That's because, and also you wanna make sure that you leave a little bit of room at the top. You've done a good job right there. You have a little bit higher you can go if you wanted to, but that when you light it, that tobacco is going to expand out. And if you packed it all the way to the top and you light it and you've got a nice pipe, it's going to expand over onto the rim, and it's going to singe the top of your bowl. And sometimes you can kind of get it off, but if it singed it really good and it's gone past the protective coating that's on most of these, it'll actually just leave a black mark, and you don't want that. So when you do it, all right, have your tamper handy. You just give it a light toasting, right? You just want it, you're not lighting it, and you're going to give it a light toasting, and then you're going to tamp it very lightly. And what I do is I do it one more time, give it one more light tamping. I usually do a 2 toast, and I do it, and then by then the top portion will have a little bit of a gray ash on top. All right, that means you're good to go. So then you take your flame, and when you do your flame, it doesn't have to be down in your bowl. It doesn't even have to be that close, because as you're puffing, it's going to draw the flame down, and that's what you want. Because if you bring it too close to the rim, you're going to burn the rim. But if you keep it about right there, it's going to draw it down in there, and you can puff the flame down in there. And you just want to go around the bowl in a circular motion so that everything gets the same amount of ignition on each portion of the bowl. And then you're good to go. Maybe one very light tamp, but you're lit up, you're ready to go. By the third one, you should be good. But look, guys, if you don't do it in 3, if it takes you 4 or 5, just do an even light job. It's not a race. You're not doing any showmanship. You're just trying to get a good even light so that you're enjoying your next hour. So don't let anybody bully you into saying, well, you should be able to light it on 1, or you should be able to smoke the bowl all the way down without ever touching it. Look, some people can do it, and that's fine. It's a competition for them. At the end of the day, if you're in a conversation with somebody and you've lit your pipe and you're talking, it goes out, relight it, keep going. There's no set rules for this, but you will have people that'll
Pipe snob.
You know? Yeah, oh yeah, and they're out there. They're out there. Okay.
And some shapes,
So question,
and some pipes just never burn.
Yeah, exactly. And it all depends on, and that's another thing. A lot of these shapes do matter, because I always suggest for people that are just starting off with pipes to get straight pipes, and there's a reason for that. Straight pipes are very easy to learn because when you're picking up the pipe, usually, what are you smoking again? Aromatics. And what are aromatics? Very wet. So when you're smoking that pipe and it starts to get wet at the bottom of that bowl, all right, if you've got a really bent pipe and you go to put that pipe cleaner, and by the way, when I tell you to guys to put your pipe cleaner in the bowl, it doesn't mean cram it down in there. Very gently and softly and carefully put it down in there, because that briar is hot. And if you put that pipe cleaner in there that's metal and it's very sharp, if you ever feel a pipe cleaner, poke yourself with it. It can draw blood. If you put that in there and you jam it in there and it hits the side of that bowl, it's going to hit a divot into your briar, and it's going to knock it out, and that can cause you to have what's called burnout down the road. It exposes the rest of the briar that's not protected by carbon or through factory coating to the flame, which can cause issues. But the reason I say to do the bent pipe is because a lot of these bent pipes, especially factory pipes, they're drilled, they're good, don't get me wrong, but trying to get a pipe cleaner into a bent surface down there evenly all the way to the bowl on a bent pipe, sometimes it's luck, sometimes it's not. You got to turn that pipe cleaner and kind of get it in there. But with a straight pipe, it's almost always a straight shot. As you're learning, you get that, you go in there and you just lightly put it in there and you can pull it right back out and you can draw that moisture out of there. Okay. I go through about 2, sometimes 3 pipe cleaners depending on the blend. I don't smoke very wet, but I tend to put one in there anyways because I don't want the potential of gargle. I don't like gargle. I've gotten it in my mouth. It's not good. It doesn't taste good. It's very, very depending on what you're smoking, usually always bad. It's never good. But that's why I like straight pipes. And you can use your pipe cleaner as you go. And overall, it's a very simplistic pipe. But the bent pipe is mainly for comfort, right? And in the beginning stages, I think a straight pipe is the best teaching pipe there is.
Would a bent pipe create more moisture too?
A bent pipe does create more moisture. That's some people debate that, but I believe that to be true because that saliva, believe it or not, no matter how hard you try, saliva from your mouth is going to go into that draft hole, down your bit into your draft hole, and that's your own saliva. With a straight pipe, the chances of it going that flat path all the way to your bowl is much more likely to happen. But with a bent bowl, you're going to get dabble going all down that bowl. So it really cuts down on a lot of things. That's why I personally, even to today, I still smoke a lot of straight pipes. I smoke a lot of long shank pipes, Canadians, Lavats, Lumbermans, Liverpools, Billiards, straight apples. I smoke a lot of those, even me, and I've smoked for a long time. It's just the ease of smoke, and I like long shank pipes. They smoke cool.
It's a neat hobby, and it's as interesting, intriguing, and varied as cigar smoking, in a very close parallel in a different way. And I'm intrigued by it, but I really appreciate what this guy knows about it. Yes, Steve, you had a question.
So, you've done everything you can, and you have maybe someone that belongs, not a family member, and they get one of these butane lighters that has a jet on it, and you scorch your pipe a little. Is it ruined, or is there a way to repair that?
There is a way to repair, depending on how deep the scorch mark is. It really depends. If it's very light, sometimes it can be buffered out and refinished. The rim can be refinished on top. Overall, even if it's kind of a medium scorch on there, know that pipe's life is going to eventually probably get it anyways. It's some degree. You smoke a pipe 100 times, it's going to have some blackness on the rim. I mean, the least you can do to add to it, the better. But if it's a deep scorch, typically no. That's a tough one unless you get somebody that's willing to take the first layer off. And a lot of these pipe shops will do it. They've restored it to that point, but it definitely takes away the integrity of the pipe. Like if it's a Dunhill and you've scorched it and they have to take that layer off, you're never gonna get your investment back on that pipe, more than likely. Yeah, but just know if you did scorch it early on, it was probably gonna come down the road over time anyways. Just don't add to it.
An interesting aspect of pipe smoking also that I noticed is I smoke cigars because they put me in a mental frame of mind that I like. I often say to people that are new to cigars, go to a cigar lounge, socialize in an environment where there are other cigar smokers. I've never ever seen a fight break out in a cigar lounge.
It's community.
It's just everybody's equal. It's all really nice. People are friendly. Then I started thinking about the pipe smokers that I know. They all look very contemplative. They all look very intelligent. They all look very much at peace. And they all look like none of them own a wristwatch, clock, or iPhone. So, so there is a, the point I'm trying to make is there's an attitude, there's a feeling, and there's a state of mental bliss that you get to in smoking a pipe that is different than that state of mental happiness that you get to in smoking a cigar. And I'm here to tell you, they're different enough that you should give one a try and see if you're in the mood for a pipe at a certain time in your life. You're reading a book, you just listen to some music, or if you're in the mood for a cigar, and then teach yourself and educate yourself as to what those differences are and enjoy both hobbies, because they are different.
Yep.
The whole experience of smoking a pipe, if I go in there and I have a cigar and I got my cigar brain going and I think, well, I want to try a pipe because I want to be more like Brice, and I go blah blah blah, and I go, oh, let's do it, and I got to do all this stuff, I approached it wrong. If I go in and I never even think about a cigar, and I go into my nut house and I've got my favorite pipe and I'm looking at my favorite blend and I'm putting on some quiet music and I focus on that pipe experience, the mental experience is different than the experience. And I really wanted to bring that out and explain that there's a different highway you go down with tobacco. And it's very, very happy, and it's very great hobby, and it's a new road of discovery if you want to take it. And I'm thrilled that Brice knows so much and can contribute so much, because every time I see him, I ask him a new pipe question. And I'm also thrilled to know that there's so many of us that are friends that are cigar smokers that also know how to enjoy a pipe and are intrigued by it. Yes, Steve?
Okay, so get back to my question about what happens when your bowl is burned.
Buy another pipe. Buy 10. Yeah.
Is there like a triage or a first aid that you can exercise right away to say, oh, okay, it seems to be scorched here. Is there a way to pull the scorch out without using chemicals that will forever ruin the flavor? Or is there like a light sandpaper,
So when you get into sandpaper, I personally don't like the idea of using sandpaper. It really depends on the pipe, right? If it's a pipe, like I've got a couple pipes that are worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would trust myself with a piece of sandpaper to take that off. I personally, depending on the investment, would consider different approaches. I have used sandpaper on very cheap pipes. My problem I ran into that is the pipe at that point on the top part was left without any type of protected coating on top.
Yeah.
So if it's a pipe that you want to get restored back, I would heavily suggest getting online. There's plenty of pipe restorations. I use Boswell pipes for a lot of my restoration. He does a great job. Usually I can get my pipe back in my possession within a week, and he has ways of going about it without affecting the integrity of the pipe. And if he has to, he's good enough at getting it back to where it needs to be for that. But it's frustrating when that happens, because the first thing you're going to encounter if you scorch that pipe on top is bubbling. The protective layer that it has on top, depending on what they use, or lacquer or whatever they used for the top portion, will bubble. That's the first thing that'll happen. It doesn't just happen on the edge. If you overheat your bowl, the sides of the bowl can bubble on you too, and that can be really frustrating. And when it gets to that, the best thing to do is to find somebody that can refinish that pipe for you. The only thing that does do is it will almost always affect the overall investment of the pipe, because usually if they refinish the pipe, it can start, depending on what the pipe is and who it's made by, if they have to go over the original nomenclature that's printed on the pipe, that can take that off. And then when you go to resell it, whoever's reselling it will have to mention that the nomenclature has been worn off or affected.
So there's a difference then between a natural and a finished.
Well, so yes, there are natural pipes out there. Yeah,
finish,
they're called
right?
naked pipes, and they're out there. I don't have a ton in my possession. Reason being, a lot of the naked pipes, the oils on your hands, you got to be really careful for naked pipes because they. And I think you may have. I thought maybe you had one over there, but they're
Everything stayed in when it's
okay. Well, they're the naked ones. If you even have the least bit of dirt on there, there's no getting that off. It soaks up on that naked pipe. I like the ones that have a good, solid, shiny finish on them. They usually kind of keep the all the oils on your hands from penetrating the wood.
Is that why you wear gloves?
Some people wear gloves. I mean, if you're, I mean, there are
They
pipes
have
out
pipe
there.
gloves, right?
Yeah, well, there's pipes out there that run thousands of dollars, and those guys. Here's the thing about some of these pipes: they put those gloves on because they can't get these pipes back. This is a one-off that this artist, and that's what these briar makers are, or these briar pipe makers are. They're artists, and sometimes they may only put 50 pipes out a year, if that, and they only did that one size. You may never see that fire grain and that size and that perfection ever done again. So these guys are protecting their this investment because down the road, that's, I mean, like me, I have 300 pipes. I collect pipes. That's what I love to do. I don't necessarily wear white gloves, but like for a lot of my meerschaums, I don't touch it by the meerschaum. I touch it by the stem because I don't want the oil in my hands affecting the process in which it collects its natural patina. So a lot of these guys, they put white gloves on. It's not a bad idea. It's not necessary for most pipes that you're going to encounter though, but you know, if you get a towel pipe that's, you know, $3,500 and it would behoove you to do some sort of protection process.
I would put that in a collector's case.
Yeah, and I have collector's cases in my house. I keep mine in leather cases at home, and I've got these drawers where I have them all stacked nice and neat.
So, I used to buy, or I bought a calabash. Probably
Yeah.
And the calabash had a meerschaum, like a Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And it was kind of a cheap pipe.
Mhm.
But when I smoked tobacco, and it wasn't my hands or the oils, you know, for my body, but it was the coloration from the tobacco that was going into the meerschaum.
Uh-huh.
But it would only go in like to a certain extent. It wasn't like a cardiovascular system where like
We're veined out.
Yeah. And I guess that just comes with the term, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because if you do smoke a meerschaum pipe,
Uh-huh.
you're going to get that area immediate to the bowl.
Yeah, well, here's the great thing about meerschaums is unlike briar pipes where you need that carbon caking, meerschaums don't necessarily need it. That's been a debatable thing, but overall, it's not so debatable where people are losing pipes over it. Most people I know, whenever they clean out a meerschaum pipe, they'll use like a light cloth to kind of clean it out. Because it doesn't require carbon caking. The way the meerschaum conducts heat is totally different than briar. So they're not meant to collect large amounts. Just like corn cobs are not meant to collect carbon. You can clean them right out.
Right.
You don't need to worry about it. It's really for briar pipes. Morta even can kind of get away with not having so much carbon caking too, because it's a totally different log oak.
So I used to have a pipe before my son used it, and it was lost. And it was a kind of a plastic pipe. It was and it had like a metallic interior, like a carbon based.
Did it have a metal stem?
I don't remember that.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is there's one in the display case, and it's kind of like a carbon bowl, and it's more of a plastic,
There's one here.
epoxy type of construction around
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
And what is the theory on carbon caking with that type of pipe?
I don't know enough about that type of pipe. I've never owned one of those in my arsenal.
Mine was never
before.
successful. So
Yeah,
you
so
know.
there's, I've seen pipes made out of just about anything. There's pipes made out of olive wood now. There's pipes made out of all sorts of things. Not all of them are successful products to be making pipes. If you go on eBay, you'll find a lot of pipes that I wouldn't smoke to save my life. I wouldn't trust it. And you look and you're like, "Where's this from?" "Oh, Hong Kong."
Right.
Don't touch it. You know. There are a lot of pipes out there. You're going to run into a lot of pipes that are beautiful but not smokable.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pipes that are made for decorative reasons, and I've seen people smoke them before, and you go,
Yeah.
do that.
So then to change the focus here, my wife likes to smoke one of these hobbit type pipes.
Church warden.
And it has a long stem, and she really enjoys the cooling,
Yeah.
and she gets less bite.
Yep. That's
She looks cuter too. I mean, she looks much cuter. And what I'm saying is, what I'm asking is when she smokes that pipe, what should she look for? Is there a different way of like packing it? And does carbon like?
Yeah, everything applies for a church warden. Nothing changes. The shape is the only thing. The only thing that changes is the size of the pipe cleaner you're going to need. They make church warden pipe cleaners that go all the way down in the bowl that you can keep it dry, because the worst thing that can happen with a church warden, if you don't have a proper sized pipe cleaner, is you get gargle and you go to put that in there to try and clear it out, and you can't get down in there, and you're stuck with a gargling bowl for the rest of it. You might as well just clear it out.
This is sort of like a beginner's cheater that I've learned. And so you're starting a pipe and you pack it. And if you don't have Brice there to say, well, you know, we want to like pack it lightly and then pack it mediumly and then pack it like more.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets packed in the bottom of the bowl.
Yeah.
And so your draw, I mean, it's like smoking it like you're being strangled by your cigar.
Okay. Okay.
And you're working so hard. So what I do, is before I start, is I disassemble the pipe, and I take my cleaner, and I push it in. And what that does is that pushes the tobacco that has been compressed into that small opening, so it has access. Just
And you do that before?
Before you light it.
Okay, yeah. I would say more than anything, just repack it.
Yeah.
Just repack it. That's what I would do without disassembling it and doing, because I don't like to modify a poor pack. I just want to repack it. Because if I do that, I know that there's already some integrity issues with what I've done. But if I repack it and I'm 100% before I light it, I don't even rethink it. But if you ever get to a point where you've overpacked the bowl and it's down at the bottom, what you can do is let that pipe cool just for a sec.
Yeah.
Take with the Chech tool, there's three pieces to it. There's one portion of it that's just a stick. You take that, you just lightly take the layer of the ash off and dump it out. Just the ash. Leave the rest of the tobacco in there. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take that tobacco that's in there, stir it around, right? And then just use your finger and lightly push it down in there. The bottom of it will be loose. The top of it will be packed. That's different from when the original pack, because when you do it like that, the tobacco itself is already kind of preheated and it's ready to go. You can just tap it on top and you can relight it.
Now, having assailed you with all these ridiculous questions,
No, it's fine. That's
I
what we're here
was
for.
wondering, talk to us about tobacco stores, cigar tobacco stores. Like Bob said, it's a little different than cigars. I mean, it's like sometimes you can let your tobacco, your pipe tobacco, go for long periods of time, and you don't have like a Bovita requirement. And you know, like sometimes you can take like a piece of like a Bovita or a piece of like apple, pop it in there and give it a little time, and you know, it'll kind of recirculate that moisture into it. And if it's not like 3 or 4 decades old, you know, get it going. So please tell us, what's the best way to store your tobacco?
So the best way to store your tobacco, if it's going to be long term, and when I say long term, the best tobaccos to store long term are never going to be aromatics. All right, you'll see people jar up aromatics, but they're going to get to them within the year, and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about your long term storage. I've got tobaccos in my arsenal that are 5, 10, 12, 15 years that I've just had cellaring like a fine wine. Right. You don't need to do that with aromatics. So buy just what you need for that. All right, that's what and especially with aromatics, I find more people move around with aromatics than with most blends.
Yeah.
So grab what you need for aromatics. If you think you're going to have it, if you buy 8 ounces and you think, man, that 8 ounces is going to last me a whole week, put it in a mason jar, seal it up, and when you're out and about, just take what you need out, put it in a little baggie, and go on your way. But don't just keep that whole 8 ounce in a Ziploc bag. It'll dry out. But I will share with you a way to restore your pipe tobacco. There's a really cool way to do it. If it's within 4 ounces, it works like a charm. Okay. What you do is you can take that same mason jar, and what you can do is you take a bottle cap from a soda, Pepsi, make whatever you want, and you take a piece of you take a cotton ball and you put some distilled water in there, not so that it overflows, but just so much to where that cotton ball is completely absorbed, and you put it down in that mason jar, and you put the tobacco that's dried out around it, and you seal it off. Come back within 48 hours and that tobacco will be back to its moistened phase. Don't consistently keep letting your pipe tobacco dry out, because every time you do it, you're going to lose a little something. But if it happens, you can restore it. It's fine. Especially if it's aromatic, you should be fine. Aromatics take forever to dry out anyways. So if you've let an aromatic dry out, you've usually left your bag open and you forgot you did it. But the ones that you got to look out for that dry out the most are Burleys, Virginias. They dry very quickly. So my drying process for a lot of my Virginia blends is 5-10 minutes whenever I go to smoke it, because it's going to dry really quick.
Well, thank you.
JT, you got any questions?
You're awesome.
No, but
Thank
that
you.
answered some questions I had, right? That you were just right on a talk, because I've got a bag of peach
Yeah.
tobacco that I've had at the house for a while. It's been sealed.
Yeah. Yeah, just make sure you use distilled water, otherwise you can introduce impurities to the blend and it can cause mold.
Mold, yeah.
Yeah, just like with cigars.
That's the problem with apple.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited about what we've got going. Yeah.
What pipe tobacco is gonna give you a better taste? Aromatics more of a good smell, or more of a good taste?
It all depends on the person. I mean, I talk about transitions between aromatics to English to more base blend, subtle nuances. That's usually how it goes, but our grandfathers smoked aromatics their entire life, right? But that was a different time. We are in an era of pipe tobacco like we've never seen. We've got cakes, flakes, all coins, all these things that they had small quantity of, we have readily available at any given time. They smoked a lot of aromatics because that was what was readily available, and they prided themselves on being able to be what they considered gentlemen smokers and smoke around people because they thought about things like that. And to this day, pipe smokers are good about that. I mean, how many times do you grab an infused cigar because you want it to smell nice for people around you? You don't. You do it because it tastes good. That's what most people infuse. But pipe smokers, they will cognitively grab a blend because they know that's preferable. Yeah, people will like that, and even I do that. Like if I'm going to like a social gathering, I'll grab an aromatic because I know that it's more pleasant for the people around me. It's just a common courtesy. And that's kind of what separates the common pipe smoker from the common cigarette smoker. Even you ever sat next to somebody with a cigarette going, you're like, whoa, wow, okay. But with a pipe, how many people are like, oh my gosh, I don't like the smell of the Nutty Irishman, you know? But as far as taste profile goes, it really depends on the person. I mean, like I said, some people settle in on aromatics, and that's just what they like. They like being able to. They like their apples and their grapes and their peaches and things like that. It's just, but you know, I like really good aged base blends. Like I said, the one that I showed you guys up here, it's been aged for 5 years. I typically set it in my little tobacco cellar at home, And I come back to it and I go, oh yeah, this is about ready. And you'll see that tin, it's got some air in it. It's fermented. It's ready to go. And I like that. I think that's the best sweetness you can get out of tobacco is a natural fermented tobacco.
Latakia.
And Latakia too. Latakia, the good thing about aging Latakia is a lot of times when you get an English blend straight from the factory, it can be a little rough around the edges. I let mine age a little bit, not as long as I do my base blend Virginias, but just long enough to smooth it out a little bit, and it lets those Virginias inside the English really sweeten up, and it really becomes something totally different. One thing to note though is you don't age aromatics and you don't age burleys. So remember that when you're up there and you see that burley, it can store just fine, but you're not going to add any shit. The reason we do the aging process is because the Virginia has a very unique process in which it, kind of like with cigars, it actually it has a fermenting process which acquires crystallized sugars to gather in it, and it sweetens up. Just like if you see that plume on a cigar, likewise with Virginia base, you're going to get that nice, you'll see it whenever it pops up. And a lot of people freak out because they think it's mold, but it's not, it's plume. But it can be mold, so be careful.
Well, I'm fascinated, and as you can see, there's a lot going on with pipe tobacco. It's a whole new world of discovery, at least for me, and we're really fortunate to have Brice right here with us to help out with. So I'd like to really thank you, Brice, and thank everybody for
Bravo.
Well, if you guys
diving
ever
into
have
a
any
new
questions in the shop, if you run into anything, any troubleshooting, just let me know. It's nothing you're going to run into. I haven't run into at least 100 times, okay? I've taught a lot of people how to smoke a pipe. I've tried to direct them. Not everybody's cut out for it. I tell them that at the beginning. It's a learning process. It has a learning curve to it. I tell them my story, how long it took me to really get comfortable with it. But I hope that you stick with it. I hope that you enjoy it. And if you run into any problems, you just come find me, and I'll get you in the right direction.
Okay, 2 questions.
Yeah.
2 more questions. I'm sorry to.
No, you're fine.
Okay, so, there's this cake and flake and, all kinds of different ways that it comes to you. Now, I'm thinking that it seems like a no-brainer to me. I'm a guy that likes Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And if you keep it in any form, it's going to be better. I've usually got it in like a McBaron's can.
Yeah.
And it's kind of compacted.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never really had it in like those little coin type.
Mm-hmm. I love Queen.
Yeah.
Very good.
But what I'm thinking is is there some difference that you should look at in like how it is like put together when you're buying it that will change and affect your enjoyment?
So going into the coins, there's not a whole lot of the big boys in the business that don't do a coin. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of these different blends. When you start getting into rope and you start getting into coin and you start getting into a lot of these, you are seeing a lot of smaller companies dabble in flake and cake now because it's not that hard. It's just a compression method. But what makes these great blends, the way they procure it together and everything, is they keep it together because it's marrying those flavors together.
Right.
The longer you can keep it together, the better. And the different heating processes and things like that they use, basically, you can get a lot of those coins and flakes right out of the tin, and they taste like a lot of this ribbon stuff with 5 years on it. It's the way they really marry those flavors together, especially when you start getting into Virginia Perique, which is an amazing combination. The only thing I can really compare it to for a lot of cigar smokers, when you start getting those longtime cigar smokers that are really starting to enjoy Ligero, right? The spiciness of the cigar, but it has to be married properly with the cigar, otherwise it's just a spice bomb and there's no complexity. Right. Well, the same thing with Virginia Perique blends, which they call vapors. The original vapor, Virginia Perique, not vapor. I'm
glad you clarified.
Yeah. So when you marry those together the right way, it can be done so great. Although, Just like with anything, with a cigar that's a spice bomb, you can have people that get silly with Perique and it gets over the top. And I have a few blends off the top of my head. I'll tell you guys. Nah.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah. But as far as the the thing about pipe tobacco is I had to learn the hard way. I didn't have a whole lot of people holding my hand, telling me, well, you should try that or this. I had to learn it all by myself. So I learned by experimenting, and I tell everybody, just experiment. Grab a tin of this, grab a tin of that, and guess what? You're going to find a bunch in there you really, really like that you're going to keep coming back to.
Yeah.
Scott has a question. Says, is it true that Virginia pipe tobacco is most akin to cigar tobacco in terms of flavor?
I mean, it depends on what kind of cigar you're talking about. I mean, because we have, Maduros, which I actually think that Maduros more closely resemble an English. I think that when you look at a Virginia, you're probably closer to a Connecticut as far as that nuttiness. I say that, but I mean, Burleys are notorious for being nutty too, but a Virginia has a lot of sweetness to it. Natural sweetness, and there's different types of Virginias. There's red Virginia, there's yellow Virginias, there's all kinds of different types of Virginias that kind of give different notes. But Virginia's down the if you're talking about just a straight Virginia, it's hard to compare it to a cigar because it's different. The closest I could compare it to would probably be a sun-grown or a Connecticut, but they do have a lot of comparisons as far as the flavor complexity.
Thanks, Scott.
Got anything else, Scott?
Carolyn?
This may be a silly question, but this is a new pipe, so it doesn't have the cake on it. So how do I know when it's time to stop, like the dottle? How do I know it?
Okay, so how do you know? So when you get to the bottom of the bowl, and by the way, let me tell you real quick here. As you smoke your bowl, one trick that I like to do. Some people do it, some people don't. I personally do it. It's just comfortable for me. When I smoke a bowl and I pack it to the top, I smoke it to about halfway down, a little half, and then I just take that straight little pin I was saying. I take that first layer of ash off and I dump it, and I just restart the bowl. You don't have to. You can smoke it ash all the way down, but I find being able to get the flame to the direct tobacco without getting that layer of ash when you're sucking, you can get that ashy taste in your mouth. So I find taking it off at halfway helps a lot, but when you get down to the bottom of the bowl, for me, I taste it. I start to taste a complete difference in the blend. It almost becomes airy, and it loses pretty much everything. And by the end, when you start packing, you're going to see a reduction in your smoke also. So when you start seeing a reduction in the smoke, and you can visually tell there's a reduction in the tobacco and in the smoke and in the flavor, time's up on the bowl. Yeah.
Scott responded with, nicely done, Brice. Very informative and a fascinating topic.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Brice. Like I said, the best way to learn something is try and teach it, and this is how I'm learning. Yeah. Believe me. On a separate quick note, I'd just like to mention to all the cigar nuts out there that, and I personally want to thank everybody. Brice has let me go nuts with my little reviews, which, Scott and I, like a few years ago, made up these little review sheets, which apparently I'm the only one. We made them for customers because we like to. Oh, I remember that cigar. It had a red band, and it was great, but I don't remember what it was. So these review sheets allow people to keep track of what they smoke, which nobody did, but I did. And at one point in time, Brice and I decided it'd be a good idea to say reviewed by Uncle Bob out in the cigar store for the ones that I've put some notes into. And I don't know why, but you guys are buying them up like crazy. If my picture's on it, people want to know what I smoke.
It's a roundabout way of saying we hit a home run. Is what you're trying to say.
Bottom line is that encouragement is all I needed to keep doing it. Yeah. So all I do is I'll grab a cigar that interests me, And then I'll always make it my first cigar of the day. I'll focus on it either in the upstairs room here or out at the nut house. And I won't let anything get in the way. And I'll just make notes on the taste notes and what time I lit, what I had it with, whether the draw was open, whether it was medium or strong and all that. So that created enough interest that I've got just a notebook pile of reviews. And I wanted to share tonight, just in a quick closing with everybody that's out there, that this weekend I reviewed a cigar that was kind of an old friend, an old forgotten friend, and it was an old friend that I didn't care about. And it was Fratello Cigars. This guy started up 5 years ago, one-man show, and I wasn't that impressed with it. And Brice brought him in recently and said, yeah, try this one, try this one. This particular one is the Fratello Bianco 3. And what I found interesting about it is it's a fairly dark cigar. It's got kind of a Maduro profile, and I'll go into that a little bit more. But it's a Robusto. But it's a 56 ring gauge, fatty Robusto. Scott, hey. And this cigar lasted me over 2 hours, a Robusto, 2-hour Robusto. And it started out with the typical dark sweetness, a little bit of coffee, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Now, Brice has found that the ones he smoked are on the little bit of a tug side on the draw. The ones that I smoked were very, very loose and easy, and they loosened up as I smoked.
It wasn't a bad. It just starts off. It's there, but it's not. The smoke output makes up for it for sure.
But as a quick note, just to kind of give you the aha moment I had with this cigar, taste-wise, and I'm going to share this with you in case you're out and about. I know a lot of our friends are in all over the place. Where's Nathan now? Denver?
Denver.
Yeah, Nathan's in Denver. Eric's in Indianapolis. Doug's in San Antonio. Scott's in Tucson. So, hi everybody. If you run across a Fratello, let me tell you what the Bianco reminded me of, the taste note. I used to eat lunch out for business a lot with a lot of bankers back in the day. Downtown Seattle, there's a restaurant called the Metropolitan. The Metropolitan had a back room. It's a nice steakhouse, but it also had an off-the-menu pepper steak. So I could go to the back room, and I could get this pepper steak, and he'd let me order it in 1.5 or 2 inch and sirloin or whatever. I would order it as a fillet, 2-inch fillet, with the peppercorns and this savory juice, gravy, melting down buttery over it, and the umami taste of the steak with the pepper. And that's what this cigar, in the second half only, reminded me of. I picked that up about halfway down, which incidentally, halfway down is where I had to force the first ash on this cigar.
Wow.
So those are kind of the things. Now, that steak lunch that I had at the Met cost me $65. This cost me $9. Just do the math, whichever you want. But I just wanted to share that and kind of tag it on. I don't know if you think that's a good part of Uncle Bob's each month, but there's so much interest in these reviews that when I run into one that has kind of some interesting side notes to it, I thought I'd take this moment to share with you. So thanks a lot and goodbye, everybody. Hope you make it home safely in the snow. Well, thank you.
Bravo.
So, you've been, this